What's the good word?
To hell with Georgia.
We're going to be saying that a lot on this week's show. Welcome to BuzzLine. I'm John Rawl, and he is Jonathan Leifheit, the publisher of GoJackets.com. And yes, the Georgia Bulldogs, they waller into Bobby Dodd Stadium this weekend for a big game, looking to advance their belief that they can win a national championship, and Jackets want to end that belief real quickly. We'll talk about that. But, Jonathan, we're also going to talk about a 43-20 thumping at the hands of the Duke Blue Devils.
I don't even know what to say about that. It was probably, well, it was easily the worst performance by the Jackets all year. Defense, you never even got off the bus. The offense apparently joined them on the bus after halftime. And special teams, well, they continued to be special as always. So, all in all, like I said, I don't think I've seen a more miserable performance. Probably the last time I saw a team, Coach Johnson, coach team play this bad was probably in that loss to Middle Tennessee State. Gosh, when was that? 2010. It's been that long ago that it was
in
that
Murfreesboro?
No, it was actually at Bobby Dodd. It was
okay.
The week after Miami. They had a horrible loss to Miami where they blew a big lead, and then the hangover carried over. Well, there was no hangover to carry over this time. They went into Durham, played to a 20-20 tie at halftime, and then came out and laid the biggest stinker I think I've ever seen.
We'll talk about it right here on BuzzLine. We're at Buffalo's Cafe. Here's Austin. He'll take care of you when you come in here to Buffalo's. And we'll be right back to dig into this loss in Durham when we come back on BuzzLine. This is BuzzLine, a production of CRM Sports with Jonathan Leifheit of GoJackets.com. He is the publisher of that CBS Sports Interactive website. I'm John Rawl. We're glad to have you back here on this Thanksgiving week edition, and we wish you and all y'all a very happy Thanksgiving week and weekend, and a happy Thursday, a happy Friday, and we hope a very happy Saturday as Georgia is the opponent for the Jackets this week on the flats. But right now we're going to take our attention away from Atlanta and go to the mausoleum known as Wallace Wade Stadium where the Jackets' dreams of possibly going to a bowl died at the mausoleum this past weekend.
Well, they haven't died yet, but they're certainly on life support. So at this point they have to beat Georgia to be regularly bowl eligible. Then if they don't get that, then they'll go to a waiver process at 5-6 if they lose to Georgia, and that would basically put them in a position where occasionally you'll see a 5-7 team. Well, guess what? Tech will be ahead of all the 5-7 teams. Mm-hmm. Not only that, because their APR is so high, they'll also be at the top of that stack. So from that standpoint, bowl eligibility is probably still there, but, man, it's definitely not looking very good.
So, Jonathan, that's why we have you on this show, to be an ambassador to all Jacket fans across the galaxy. What in the world happened in that second half? How could the Jackets lose to a team that was on a 6-game losing streak?
Well, all I can tell you is it started in the first half even beforehand, and that was with the defense. And let's go back and look at what Duke has done. We talked about the 6-game skid that they're on. They lost to Army last week and scored 16 points. They lost to Virginia Tech, who Georgia Tech beat. They scored 3 points. They lost to Pitt. They scored 17. They lost to FSU. They scored 10. And they lost to UVA, and they scored 21. At no point did they score in that entire thing more than 21 points, and that was only once. And Tech comes out and allows them 20 points in the first half alone. Defense never even got off the bus, in my opinion. They just completely they were Swiss cheese from the get-go. The offense came out and actually played pretty darn good in the first half. They put up 3 touchdowns. I think they had the one turnover that kind of took away one other piece, but by and large they did pretty well. But the defense, this one, sometimes you can point out and say, oh, it was a team loss, special teams, offense. This one's on the defense all the way through. I mean, the amount of yardage and points that they gave up, 43 points to Duke. And I'm looking here right now. I think if I go look here at the box score, they gave up a total of, 319 yards rushing and another 181 yards. That's 500 yards of offense they gave up to a very pathetic Duke offense. It just, you can't rationalize it. You can't explain it. You can't excuse it. It's just all the way around horrible.
Well, I would make some excuse that having Army and Coach Monken the week before would have helped Duke prepare for Georgia Tech's offensive scheme, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the reverse and the defense.
Right, we're talking about the defense, and somehow or another Army found a way to hold them to 16 points. Army found a way to hold them to 16 points. So, I mean, I went through, I recapped what they've scored in the last 6 games where they've been on that losing skid. If you go back one more where they beat UNC, they only scored 27 in that one. And UNC's defense is certainly, statistic-wise, much worse than Georgia Tech's. So how in the world do you come out and lay an egg?
And these 43 points were all earned by the offense?
Yeah, it wasn't. It wasn't like
a pick six like we saw at Virginia Tech.
We saw one interception and no fumbles on the day. No major special teams gaffes, although they weren't great, but there was no major.
Cost them the game.
All right, 500 yards of offense. They got the ball, and usually regular territory, 20 to 40 yard line on their own side of the field, and drove the field every single time. I think they only got what I'll call one cheap score, and that was the last one where Coach Johnson basically said, "Screw it, I got to go for it," and so he went for it probably on about his 35 yard line. Because they were running out of time, and then a couple plays later they put it in. So, if you want to take away 7 points, all right, fine. They gave up 36 to Duke. Yuck.
What was this the highest point total the David Cutcliffe coached Devils had all year?
I believe it was,
I just heard you mention these recent games Duke had, and they weren't anywhere close to 43.
Right. So I just looked real quickly at their schedule, and I'm looking at it. They had one game where they scored more.
Against their hometown opponent, North Carolina Central.
Yeah, they came close against Northwestern when they scored 41. Other than that, nothing within 9 points.
What you saw with Duke, has there been another very similar offense that the Jackets have seen in 2017 thus far?
No, not really. I mean,
what do they do different?
Well, they probably run the ball more often than most. Virginia Tech probably runs a comparable offense. They kind of run that spread option and try and run the ball. But Tech did a great job of shutting them down. So if you kind of look up the schedule, I don't really see anybody that runs anything, all that comparable. Maybe they kind of run that read spread option thing. Miami runs some variants of that, and they managed to only give up 25 to them. So this is completely unexplainable, just completely unexplainable.
Well, that's coming from Jonathan, who those kind of words aren't often used by you.
No, they're not, and I will say, fortunately, we haven't had this kind of a performance very often.
This is by far the worst of the year.
Oh.
In a year where there's been bad performances.
Yeah, I mean, this is nothing comes close to
that
this
says a lot because, there's been close calls, but there's been some games where there were just unbelievable head-scratching things that happened to cause the loss. This one was a epic failure, is what you're saying.
Yeah, pretty much.
Defensively.
Defensively. The only game probably comes close in terms of being that bad defensively might be the UVA game, but even that one, we've got special teams that heavily contributed to that, and the offense too, for that matter, did some contribution to that. But this one, I can't put it on the offense in terms of.
I want an answer, Jonathan. Tell us why. Why?
Until I go get my psychology degree, I'm probably not going to be able to help you with that one.
Well, that's okay. We're going to get through this, and I want to ask in the next segment kind of what kind of feedback you're getting from your audience there at GoJackets.com, because the Jacket fans, after last week's show where I broke out my big win bow tie.
Maybe you need to keep that thing hidden for a bit.
Well, I want to wear it next week on the show.
That'd be good, but I'm just saying it seemed to bring bad luck the following week, that's for sure.
Well, I don't mind wearing it next week because there's a chance there won't be any more games. Well, if they win, I guess they can go to bowl next week. So this is a do or die. If there truly was a do-or-die game. Georgia is a do-or-die for the Jackets. Of course, sadly, it's a do-or-die for Georgia if they want to fulfill their hope of getting to a national championship.
We all know how badly we want them to die. So.
Yes. Bobby Dodd Stadium, where dreams go to die.
Unfortunately, this year it's actually been pretty good for Tech fans. They haven't lost a game at Bobby Dodd. So,
well, I was talking about for the visiting teams. But.
Yeah, unfortunately, in other years, I've had more than a few share of my dreams die.
Yes, so, okay.
That's life as any kind. You know what? That's not exclusive to being a Georgia Tech fan. That's any fan.
Yeah, especially those of us who like the Atlanta Braves. We know what you're talking about. All right, come back with us. We'll continue talking Duke. Get you ready for the Dogs. This is BuzzLine from CRM Sports.
Go Cubbies, by the way.
You had to ruin it. We're going to lose everybody now because of that comment.
Yeah, ever since the Braves moved into my neck of the woods, done.
Oh, you're talking about – I thought you were talking about Atlanta. I was like, you really are that old. Which you were born A.B. after the Braves came to Georgia, right?
I think
66.
So. I was the year after.
All right, but you're talking about Cobb County.
I'm talking about Cobb County.
He's a disgruntled Cobb County-er.
Yeah, I'm not happy with the money that
well, we appreciate your support.
Yeah, I'm real happy with the amount of money my commissioners obligated me to pay for to enrich the pockets of the billionaire Braves owners.
Yes. Braves still are corporately owned, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Liberty Media.
Okay, gotcha. Which I think's crazy. They need to have, for goodness sakes, I guess Ted Turner needs to come back. All right, we'll come back now with more BuzzLine, and we've got some comments coming through Facebook. We'll get to those. Thanks, everybody, for watching us again as we have a show this Thanksgiving week. We appreciate and are thankful to you. Back we are. This is BuzzLine. John Rawl with Jonathan Leifheit, GoJackets.com. When we're at Buffalo's Cafe, this particular location is in Cumming, Georgia. Exit 14 just off of Georgia 400, and you can come down Buford Highway and head toward Buford on Buford Highway, and we're right there. Very easy to find and a great environment for you to come out and watch the Jackets or any of your other teams that you follow. 14 metro locations of Buffalo's Cafe. Not a bad seat in the house. 27 televisions are available here at this location in Cumming, and you'll always find a great, friendly wait staff at Buffalo's Cafe. Just a wonderful place and a wonderful partner with all of us Georgia Tech fans here as the home of BuzzLine. We've got our Georgia Tech scooter in the background. If you're able to watch us on Facebook Live, come in and take a look at this thing. It's a work of beauty. Maybe one day Buzz will come out on the field riding this scooter if it will crank up, and I'm sure it will. Jonathan Leifheit, Jackets go down in Durham. Bad second half defensively for the Jackets, 43-20. They fall.
No, bad game defensively. The whole thing.
Oh, well, they lost the game in the second half, but you're saying they shouldn't have scored all those points in the first half either.
Well, right. I mean, they gave up they were lucky to only give up 20 in the first half, to be honest.
All right.
So.
I stand corrected. Let me rewind. Okay. 43-20, they still lose to Duke, and now it's a do-or-die game against the Georgia Bulldogs. You have been rather lenient on the offense in this game. No turnovers except for the one turnover.
Yep.
But that you should win a ball game. You should be able to control the clock offensively. What was the final breakdown on possession time?
I'd have to look here real quick, and I can do that. But I believe it was after all said and done, I think it ended up being pretty close to even.
Well, you said Duke ran the ball a good bit.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, in the third quarter, Duke had something along the lines of 13 out of the 15 minutes. I think Tech only ran 6 plays the entire third quarter. So when you look at it, and when we get the possession time breakdown, Duke had the ball 32 minutes. Georgia Tech had it just over 32 minutes, and Tech had it just under 28 minutes.
Man, another game where they lost the time of possession.
Yeah, typically it's not even close. Tech holds the possession, but Duke continued to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball. And I mentioned 319 yards rushing on the day. So
what was Tech?
Tech was held to 277 yards rushing.
So they didn't even lead the game in rushing.
So I will say this. I mean, you ask, what about the offense? Well, they played a good first half, but the second half, the offense didn't do much. Well, they didn't score a single point the entire second half. So you can't let them off but they needed to match possession for possession. They needed to pick the defense up since the defense was struggling, and they couldn't do it. I don't know exactly what adjustments Duke made. I haven't really looked at. I haven't wanted to go back and watch this. It kind of hurts a little bit to watch, but Duke did a great job of kind of bottling up the middle, forcing third and longs. They were doing just a much better job on first and second downs than they did in the first half. Tech was able to make some conversions in the first half and kind of move the chains, but they were typically in kind of a 3rd and 5 and shorter. In the second half, it was much more like 3rd and 6 to 3rd and 9, that type of thing. So Duke changed up some things. Like I said, don't know what they did, but they were certainly getting them to the point of attack much better, and Tech ended up. I know that they were going into half. I believe they were 5 of 6 or 6 of 7 on third downs. They ended up 6 of 12, so they ended up basically converting 1 third down in the second half.
Just bad. Now, you said earlier how Coach Johnson decided to go for it on 4th down deep in his own territory because the game was pretty much winding down and he had to make a decision. How could they not get that first down?
Well, it was like I think it was 4th and 6th, so it wasn't like it was an easy gimme kind of thing, but they were desperate. They were down at that point 36-20, and I think there was about 6-7 minutes to go. So you still had time for you needed just 2 scores, and you still had time to get those 2 scores. But given that the defense hadn't been able to stop anybody, you couldn't afford to punt the ball away because Duke was just going to run it out at that point. So your only chance at that point was convert the 4th down and see if you can get down the field to score, and then by some miracle you can get a little momentum. Maybe the defense can pick themselves up a little bit and make one stop. Finally, one stop.
Your thoughts on that play call on that 4th down play?
I don't even remember. To be honest, I don't remember the play call. I don't think there was anything great or not great about it.
Rewind the game.
You know what? I take that back. Actually, I do remember the play call because what they did was they actually went for it from the punt formation. So Presley Harvin dropped back, and then it was horrible. Yeah, now it's all coming back to me. So sorry I had some repressed.
I'm sorry I had to bring that memory back.
Repressed memories. So what they did was drop back into punt formation. Presley Harvin takes the snap, and then he attempts to throw a pass. Well, as it turns out, pass interference on the wing guys outside is not possible on a punt formation because those wing guys are expected to be able to block their guy down the field and we're set up for their return. So pass interference doesn't count. So that guy just blocked the Tech receiver right off the field. The ball goes harmlessly, out of bounds or right on the border, and that was it. Turnover.
That was almost an out-coaching maneuver by Duke.
Well, they didn't out-coach. Tech, it's like they didn't know the rules.
Well, yeah. Okay.
So, it was just a horrible call on Tech's part. So, from that standpoint, that was just indicative of the type of thing that happened that day. You've got to know that you can't throw a pass to a guy that's likely to get blocked out of bounds and not get an interference call. Now, if they had dropped back with, Taekwon and as quarterback and thrown it and that same thing had happened, it had been interference. But that's not what they did, and that's not what how the play was.
Well, in a season of, as we've said, of tough ones, this one is a real, I won't even use the word that we've used a couple times, head scratcher. This is a whole body scratcher.
Yeah, it's the most confounding loss I've seen. Like I said, I kind of was thinking back on really horrible losses that just made me go, what the, 4-letter expletive. And it's been a long time since I've seen one that was truly this bad and this baffling.
Keith Minner, our wingman, our mentor of the show, he has a question for you, Jonathan. What is the psyche of the team after such a big word here, putrid performance in all phases of the game? Psyche of the team.
Well, I mean, it's really kind of tough to kind of say right after the game. We got access to the coaches and players, and I don't know if you've got plans to play any of that, but
I don't. In fact, I'm so angry I'm not going to give coaches and players any more airtime this week. So
it's really kind of tough to say how they handle that kind of thing. We've heard from them. In some cases, they've had a tough loss and bounced back nice. In other cases, not so much. So I can't really say, at this point, what their psyche is. Hopefully, a lot of people will kind of look at that and get pretty pissed off about it. I hope we can say that on the air. But
well, you just did.
Yeah, I did. Sorry about that. If you need to, edit that out later. And they'll want their coach to be screaming at the players. In some cases, that's great and that works. But in other cases, you got to build your players back up. And right now, if they don't believe in themselves, then Coach Johnson's job is to get them to believe in themselves and what they can do again. Because if they don't believe in themselves on Saturday, as soon as the first bad thing happens and the doubt creeps in, Georgia will run over us like a truck. And so we got to be careful of that. So they've got to get themselves back to believing in themselves and confident in what they do. And if that means yelling at them, great. If that means pumping them up and building them up and hitting them with positive reinforcement, that's what needs to happen. But Coach Johnson knows these guys better than I do. He certainly had enough success for me to say, you better find the right buttons to push and let him do it.
Keith also asked this question, Jonathan. I think it's a fair question to ask. Is our current predicament just the bad karma of making Taquan Marshall the quarterback over Matthew Jordan?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. I know the favorite player on the team is usually the backup quarterback, especially if you're losing, and that's what's happened. But Jordan sat out all of spring and a good bit even sometime in fall with an injury, and Marshall won it on the field. And then you go back and look at kind of what's happened. Jordan came back in for the Miami game, and then he got injured, and he's been out for that one. So we continue to see kind of his inability to even play. So it's not really karma. It's really more about, who's available. And right now Marshall's there. So
what is the latest with Jordan and his injury situation?
Yeah, and I was trying to refresh myself on kind of where that was at. And I looked at the wrong.
Did I see where Humphreys was out this Duke game?
Yeah, that was for them. So Matthew Jordan was actually out for this game as well.
Okay.
And we don't have a timetable on his return. So even if Jordan, even if Jordan had been the starting quarterback, he wouldn't have played Saturday because he was out injured again. So, and he may or may not be back next weekend. If I had to make a guess, I'd say he's not.
While you have that pulled up, go ahead and let people know who's out for the season.
Yeah, Shawn Davis, place kicker. We saw him go out against Miami. Andrew Marshall and Brad Morgan, neither one of them has played all season. Marshall had a leg injury and then in foot, and then re-injured that he was set to come back and then re-injured that. He was a senior. He would have been a senior this year had he played. He'll take a red shirt, and he'll be a senior next year, and we'll be back to play. And then Brad Morgan will be back for next year as well, assuming he returns. Anyway.
Also getting a message in from Jim and Jennifer Veitch. Hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. This is the most disappointing, they write Sunday, I think they may have meant Saturday, that I can remember in a long time. We will be there Saturday. Such a promising start to such a disappointing season. Go Jackets, no matter what.
Yep.
Good attitude. And, again, last week on this show we were ecstatic with a win over Virginia Tech. But in sports, there's no guarantee. In life, there's no guarantee.
Yep.
And when you should go up to Duke and win, and let's face it, this has not been a perfect Georgia Tech football team this season. So the chances of losing in Durham were there. And they just fell apart. Now, it will mostly be forgotten if you can knock out those puppies from Clark County. And then you get to go to a bowl, and then you maybe can win that. So we're trying to put a positive white and gold spin on what's otherwise a pretty dull show.
Yeah, I mean, we all know how it is with Georgia Tech folks. A win against Georgia cures a lot of ills. And
it's the national championship for this year at least.
Well, it's the state championship for sure.
Well, I'm thinking it's bigger than the state.
I'll take the state championship any day of the week. That's all I'll say.
Well, it hopefully will happen, and that's why we're on this show to talk all things Georgia Tech. All right, we will start turning our attention to Georgia and what the Jackets need to do to get the big win at Grant Field. Also, later in the show, we're going to bring on a guy that's pretty close to me, who is a Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket fan that is learning the ropes of being a Jacket fan, and we're going to see just how much he knows and what Jonathan Leifheit, Mr. Georgia Tech, can maybe help teach him, and the questions that he's had that he's asked me about Georgia Tech. So you don't want to miss that as we have a good family atmosphere on this family week of Thanksgiving. We'll come right back with more BuzzLine from Buffaloes. Welcome back to Buffalo's Cafe Coming, and this is BuzzLine, where we talk all things Georgia Tech. Jonathan Rawl, your gracious host, joined by Jonathan Leifheit of GoJackets.com, and Buffalo's, where you'll always find a great beer selection, 14 drafts on tap. In fact, many of those are local craft beers, so you don't want to miss out when you come in. And also want to remind you that Bash Night happens here at Buffalo's Cafe Coming. All-you-can-eat wings every Monday and Wednesday, $14.99, Jonathan, $14.99.
You can't beat that with a stick, man.
No, so wing it and come on to Buffalo's Cafe. Georgia Tech, Georgia, it's clean, old-fashioned hate week, and our favorite week of the regular season, I would think. Gets people's juices flowing, and a lot of people throughout Georgia and the southeast have kinfolk that may be the enemy or have coworkers that may be the enemy, and so everybody is on edge this week thinking, oh, my gosh, I hope our team wins because we don't want to face those other folks after the game if we don't win.
Yeah, it's usually, unfortunately for the Jacket fans, 2 out of the last 3 Thanksgiving weekends have been pretty darn pleasant.
Oh.
So
it makes a huge difference.
It really does. And as we like to say, silence is golden. And when we beat them, the silence is simply awesome.
It is, and again, this has been a bad year, but what if you can beat Georgia, ruin their national championship hopes, and get a big win against Georgia, which is always nice? That would certainly make up for what's been a ho-hum season thus far for Georgia Tech. And it also means a bowl berth. So the question is, Jonathan, what are the things Georgia Tech needs to do to get a victory against Kirby Smart and the Canines?
Well, I think number one is whatever game plan they had against Duke and whatever plan they had going against Duke, they need to completely forget about it because on the defensive side, it didn't work. And let's be real, they're probably going to face the best rushing attack they have faced all year long when it comes to Georgia with Sonny Michel and Nick Chubb and Swift and God knows how many they've got. So they've got to find a way to step up and stop the run. Stop the run. Stop the run. Stop the run.
Did any of those backs have any interest in Georgia Tech or vice versa in the recruiting trail?
So Nick Chubb early on had a Tech on the list, but I can tell you because he's from Cedartown, I knew from the get-go.
Cedartown's on right here. Also got another Cedartownian, Nathan, with us here in the audience at BuzzLine. So go Cedartown.
Yeah, I can tell you that that from what I was told, he had a few teams on his list, but they were more lip service. It was going to be SEC and Georgia all the way. That was
who would have been the second runner-up?
I couldn't even tell you that.
Okay.
It wasn't Tech though.
So. Alabama maybe was
maybe
recruiting him.
like that.
I mean, he was good enough to.
Yeah, he was getting looks from everybody that
okay.
anybody that would have been interested or that he was interested in would have given him a scholarship.
Okay.
There's not a school in this country that would have taken him.
And I know it breaks your heart to see your fellow alumnus from Cedartown wearing that other shade of red and black.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. I mean, the only red and black I ever want to see him wear was his high school colors. After that, he should have picked a better school.
Yeah. So if he goes off to the NFL and plays for a team that you somewhat can stomach, are you going to be rooting for him or not really? Or
he's a really good kid. I mean, I'm going to be honest. I mean, his family is very they're really good folks. So
we all make mistakes in life,
right?
And he made a mistake.
So I do wish him the best of success. But I hope he loses like hell on Saturday.
Hey, really, tell us how you feel.
There you go.
All right, so they have a very good running back tandem. However, what did Auburn do? Did you see any of that Auburn game?
Well, yeah, of course. We watched Tech play, and then I went back and watched that game. And what Auburn did was basically their line just completely dominated Georgia's line and shut them down every which way. So they forced
both sides of the ball.
Yeah, both sides. I mean, they were able to run all over Georgia, and then on top of that, but they really did a fantastic job on the defensive side of the ball of shutting them down, beating blocks, everything. In Michelle and Chubb and Swift and all the other host of running backs they had nowhere to go. They had no alley to run in. They were dancing at the line of scrimmage, just trying to find their way not to have a loss. So they pretty much, what Auburn did was beat the heck out of them at the line of scrimmage.
And do you see any of that element with Georgia Tech?
Well, I didn't see it Saturday.
Have you seen that?
I have seen it from time to time, but not consistently. We saw it somewhat against Miami a little bit here and there. They did a good job kind of shutting them down, and I thought they did a really good job of shutting Virginia Tech down. Mm-hmm. And that's a team that likes to run the ball a little bit. So it's been there on and off, but it's not been consistent. And probably the best I think game that they had against a team like that was probably Virginia Tech. And I'm not sure that Virginia Tech is quite as good as Georgia at the line, but we'll see.
All right. Well, it's going to be a challenge. Georgia's got a lot on the table. Georgia Tech has a lot on the table, too, with what they can accomplish. And let's be honest, Tech needs to beat Georgia on their own turf.
Yeah, 1999 has been a long freaking time since that's happened. And they've managed to get a few wins up in Athens, and particularly the last two they've won. But you know what? I'm getting really tired of watching them plant their stupid flag on our home field, and that needs to go away.
All right, and before we move over to other subjects, worst, you can mention names if you want, or you can keep them confidential if you'd like. Worst Georgia fan you've ever known? And they'll probably take great pride in this, by the way, so don't hold back if you.
Yeah, well, I had one that I played softball with, and he would antagonize me every
What
year.
age softball are we talking about?
Adult.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, it was when I was well into my 30s and whatnot. And he would antagonize me pretty good every year, and of course that was at one point that was during the middle of the Gailey years as well, where we lost a bunch. And then as soon as we won, he basically blocked me. I texted.
Sounds like a Georgia fan.
I texted him, and he blocked me from texting him back again, and that was it. He never said a thing to me.
And his name was?
I'm not going to give his name.
I'm just kidding. I didn't think you would. Anyway, we all have those stories. Even myself, growing up, the most arrogant fans I knew were Georgia fans.
I've got some others too, by the way. After the '97 game, I actually had a Georgia fan who I'm not sure who it was.
Which it was a win or loss?
It was a loss. We lost. That was a heartbreaker loss, and Georgia got a really horrible call at the end of the game to win, to basically a pass interference that was an interception, and we should have gotten the ball. And at the end of the game, they ended up winning 27-24. And that night at 3 a.m., I had several phone calls to my house with people barking into them, and the number was hidden. So this is, that's life.
It's clean old-fashioned hate for a reason.
I agree, and I will tell you that I did manage to actually track them down and take care of their little butts.
All right.
So,
well, we hope maybe you can make a return phone call this week. We'll come back here on BuzzLine, and we'll get any kind of recruiting information we can from Mr. Leifheit. We'll get that passed your way, and basketball as well is up and going. This is BuzzLine from Buffalo's Cafe coming. We'll be right back, y'all. Welcome back to Buffalo's Cafe, coming just off of exit 14 on Georgia 400. And we're talking Georgia Tech sports. It's clean, old-fashioned hate week. We've got some young fans, Bulldogs, Jackets. Who's going to win? Okay, we won't tell you what.
Well, he's wearing an Auburn thing, so.
Okay. I think he might be talking about another Bulldog team, but anyway. Appreciate y'all coming in. Auburn. Hey, Auburn took it to the Bulldogs.
There you go.
Ohio State, okay. All right, well, maybe Georgia Tech will face Ohio State in the bowl game here pretty soon.
No, not a chance.
Okay. Okay. Oh, okay. That's what we want to hear in Georgia, OHIO. All right, let's talk recruiting. And speaking of recruiting in people like Ohio State and others, Jonathan, anything we need to know going into the big home finale?
So we're down to about, we're coming down the stretch here. Keep in mind, early signing period this year, first time on December 20th. So that'll be kind of something different than what we've seen in the past. Kind of see how this plays out. I expect either all or most of the commitments that we have at this point will be signing in that period. We're currently sitting at about 18. I would expect at the end of the day, by the time we get to February, Tech will probably come in with probably somewhere on the order of 21, 22. Officially, there's 20 openings, but I think there's a couple of folks that will probably graduate and move on, or we'll get some transfers. So at this point, I'm going to go with
transfers out of the program.
Yeah, transfers out of the program. I take that back. We're sitting at 16. Officially, we have 18. I think the number will end up being 20, 21, somewhere in there.
All right. And this happens with every college team with the season kind of winds down and such. Any of those transfers going to be, if you know who they might be?
We don't really know for sure.
Okay.
So,
will you at least make our audience a little bit more
typically
at ease?
Typically what you look at is players that are juniors or seniors that aren't playing, the rising seniors or rising redshirt juniors, that type of thing, that haven't played a lot and are getting their degree. Okay. And they may decide to move on. So I don't have specific names, but I'm just telling you.
We don't want specific names. But
that's the characteristics you can look at players that would typically, at this point, we would know about.
All right, but we just want to make sure that it's not going to be the entire roster leaving.
No, we don't have to worry about that.
Okay, good. All right, so again, GoJackets.com is the place to go to find out all kinds of goodies when it comes to recruiting and, of course, all the insider information, Jonathan and Rod McKenzie of GoJackets.com, or your connection to the Flats for Georgia Tech sports information. Georgia Tech basketball currently still, since they played all the way out in China, kind of
1-1,
slowly getting through the early part of the season, but they
had a game today.
They fell to UCLA, but they came back and over this past weekend took care of the Bethune-Cookman Wildcats in the Ramblin' Wreck Showcase, 65-62, and they've got Texas Rio Grande Valley. I can be honest, I've never heard of that team. They're coming in to McCamish this week for a game, and also another Texas team, the North Texas Eagles, Mean Green, whatever they call themselves. They're also an opponent this Thanksgiving week. So we wish Josh Pastner's gang all the best. Anything you want to chime in with basketball-wise?
Well, we also, we mentioned the Okogie and Tadrick Jackson issue with regard to the extra benefits. We did get the returns on that from the NCAA. I believe it was Okogie got 3 games and Jackson got 6 games.
3 games immediately?
Yeah, suspended. So that will be including the UCLA game plus today's game against Bethune-Cookman. And then that'll leave one for one and 3 more for the other. So that was better than probably, what the guidelines call for, which is would have been more like 6 and 9 games. So they managed to, I think, get off pretty lightly. A lot of that's because it was turned in early and they cooperated.
ACC opener for the Jackets this year is going to be on December 30th against the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, and that will be at South Bend. The ACC home opener will be against a very good Miami Hurricane team. That's going to be January 3rd at McCamish. So keep all those dates in mind as you plan your holiday schedule. All right, this is BuzzLine. We'll take a break, and when we come back, Nolton Rawl is going to join us, and he is a Jacket fan that's learning more every day about Georgia Tech, and we'll learn from him, and maybe he'll post some things we've never thought about.
Yeah, maybe.
That's what little kids can do. So
they sure can.
It's a great time for family this week, and I'm going to bring on my son to BuzzLine. So hopefully you'll enjoy. This is BuzzLine. We'll be right back. And welcome back to BuzzLine from CRM Sports. We're at Buffalo's Cafe in Cumming, Georgia. We're with Jonathan Leifheit of GoJackets.com. And that was not Jonathan's voice we heard just then. That was the voice of Mr. Nolton Rawl.
Son of John Rawl.
That's right. That's who he is. And I am John Rawl, and we're talking Georgia Tech sports. And since family's a big deal, Jonathan, I know you'll be getting together with family this week. It's Thanksgiving.
Correct. We've got actually about
talk.
8 people come. Well, actually, a total of 8 of us, I think, will be gathering at the house. So we've got a nice big.
Tell me that address so I can make sure.
Yeah, you can come on over. Just bring the whole gang.
Well, my son lives with his mother in Oxford, Mississippi, so I don't.
We're Ole Misses.
That's right. You live about a half a mile from their stadium. And so you have to deal with all those SEC fans all the time, right?
Yep.
And so I don't get to see you all that often, so it's a pleasure to have you for a week because your school is out. So I brought you here to Georgia Tech country, and you like Georgia Tech. And
we want to beat the Bulldogs.
That's right. So I thought we would have you on to kind of declare your love officially and to also talk about
is this an early commitment? Is that what we're
Well, actually, speaking of that, so who do you want to commit to, Nolton?
What are you talking about?
All right, so here's Buzz, and pretend that Uga, the Georgia Bulldog, was here, and let's say that Tiger from Clemson was here. Which one of those 3 would you choose? All right. He's committing to Georgia Tech.
Yep.
All right.
All right, we did a hat trick right there.
Got the hat trick right there. So we'll put your headset back on. All right, tell Mr. Jonathan, let's make sure we see your face and not have the hat totally cover you up. Tell Mr. Jonathan that song we've been trying to teach you.
Oh, I'm a rambling rat from Georgia Tech and a hell engineer. A hell engineer.
There you go.
And what age were you, Jonathan, when you learned that song?
18.
Oh, so
wow.
you got him beat.
Yeah.
You're already on top.
But I didn't have we moved down here. And
why don't you go find a seat in the corner of the restaurant?
Thanks. Yeah, I should do that probably.
Probably.
So one of the reasons my son Nolton here likes Georgia Tech is because of this guy, and he's on his hat too. Buzz is a great logo for kids.
Absolutely.
And tell us what Georgia Tech does that you know of, Jonathan, to help propel that love.
Well, for one thing, they have a program. It's called the Junior Jackets,
okay,
which you can enroll your kid in, and they'll send any number of things, things like stuffed buzzes or hats or stickers and that type of. I think even do a little face stuff that you can put on. So they have the Junior Jackets program, and that also gives them, if they're available, the opportunity. I think they'll actually take them down in and around Georgia Tech some. I don't know the exact details of that program since you sprung it on me at the last minute, but I do know that it does exist, and I had some friends whose kids went through that, and they had a great time with it.
Well, Georgia Tech is a kid-friendly environment, and I know they do things all the time to help bring little kids like Nolton
Yeah, like they play basketball, football. They've been pretty good at football this year, though.
Who?
Georgia Tech.
So-so.
Yes.
They were really good last year.
Yeah, had a much better year.
Remember who all they beat last year?
Georgia in the game before Georgia, I know.
Yeah, what about that bowl game?
Oh, they beat Kentucky Wildcats. If you've seen the poster for 2017, you can see that says the
Yeah, they have a poster here at Buffalo's Cafe that we here at BuzzLine
it's over there.
help make, and it shows the great accomplishment they had last year. Unfortunately, I'm not sure we're going to be able to have that on the 2018
And it says
edition.
dog slayers and cat slayers.
That's right. They slayed the dogs and the cats last year. This year, hoping to slay the dogs, and then maybe we'll slay the Buckeyes or somebody like that in
What's
the bowl
Buckeyes?
game.
Not
That's a team
chance.
up north.
Oh.
We don't really like them very much. But, by the way, Georgia Tech ever play Ohio State? I don't recall seeing
Not in my lifetime.
Okay.
And next year we know that they play the Gamecocks, I'm pretty sure.
No, they're not playing the Gamecocks. Maybe Jacksonville State, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Yep.
But, no, he's all into the schedules and stuff. In fact, he's into a sport that he's kind of created with badminton, and he created his own team called the
Nolton Jackets, named after
Buzz. That's right. So he likes Buzz a lot, and he's got his jackets. And his Nolton Jackets badminton team is what? How many losses have you had?
0.
You're undefeated? You're like the Alabama and whoever else is undefeated
Yes,
in college
I'm
football?
not
UCF?
been defeated.
So you
Now I
have,
played today, I got like 100 points.
wow, 100 points. Maybe Georgia Tech needs to have a badminton team.
They probably do.
Well, we're glad that you are here, and of course, we want to wish everybody out there that listens and watches the BuzzLine a very happy Thanksgiving. I know Jonathan's got his Thanksgiving plans. Nolton and I are going to go down to Charleston and spend a couple of days with family and friends. And
Like, we might see the Citadel there.
yeah, we're going to go to a Citadel basketball game.
My dad likes the Citadel.
I do. We saw them get creamed by Clemson this past weekend, but not as bad as some teams have been. At least the Citadel scored 3 points. Ohio State, the people that are here, they didn't score any against Clemson last year in whatever game that was in the playoff.
Semis.
The semis, yeah, playoffs. So they're Buckeyes. But anyway, it should be a great weekend leading up to Saturday, and then hopefully, man, how great would it be if the Jackets can get that win?
Yep.
Yeah, against the Dogs, and the Dogs will be a dog slayer again.
Yeah, that's right. He said it. All right, Jonathan, happy Thanksgiving to you.
Thank you, sir.
And happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Mr. Nolton, great job. Thank you for coming on, and we appreciate your commitment to Georgia Tech.
There you go.
We'll be back to another.
And as we
Georgia
close
Tech.
out this week, I'm going to let Jonathan do his usual, and then I want you to sing that song and wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving.
Yep. Go
Okay.
Jackets.
All right, and your part, Nolton?
All right, rep from
Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer. A hell of an engineer. All right, everybody.
Go Jackets, gold and black.
And white. We'll see.
And we'll be back in the next Georgia Tech.
Thank you, everybody.